The first indications of problems were seen by the monitoring station on a typical Tuesday night when the signal came through A. Tom Mason, the night shift worker, had an outburst of odd energy readings that caused every equipment to glow like a Christmas tree. After 15 years of employment at the station, the operator almost spilled his coffee when the alarm went off. When he hit the emergency alert button, his palm trembled as if this had never occurred before. Within an hour, the United Captain James Walker stood in front of the main display while Earth Defense Force headquarters was humming with activity. Screen, his aged face lit by the red dot that pulsed to indicate the location of the unidentified object just beyond. Despite the stress in his voice, he questioned, "What do we know about Neptune's orbit?" Officer Brown said, "It's definitely not natural, sir," pointing to the energy data show that the object is slowing down and shifting its direction. Walker nodded straight towards Earth, his military training taking effect. Prepared for first contact situations, but no one thought they would ever occur. Launch the fleet of interceptors. I want everybody to see whatever this 3 Sleek. Walker ordered the lead ship, the UE's Defender, to break away from Earth's orbital defense station as they got closer, the object's actual shape, a huge ship, became evident. "Battle scars, sir," yelled out the comms, and their greatest ship was tall and covered in odd patterns. "We have a communication, officer, and it's in English." Walker's eyebrows hurled it upwards, and the sound that emerged was distinct yet full of, "We are the last of our kind, so please react, Earth vessel." Following careful consideration, the Guardians and we war of a peril that pursues us. Walker was able to approach Earth's orbital station after scans revealed that the alien spacecraft had no weaponry activated. The image of the first Guardian entering the airlock would live on in the collective memory of humanity forever. Tall, pale blue-skinned humanoids with eyes that seemed to contain. Their commander, who referred to himself as the first Guardian, used their old knowledge without wasting any. His voice was solemn as he stated, "Your world is in danger." Time with pleasantries. Once a tranquil union of 12 planets, we are now all advanced and rich. Holographic records of their civilization's collapse were shown to them by the guardians of that remains, the adversary they nicknamed the Swarm. Was a gigantic collective that was beyond anything humanity has ever imagined. Gigantic biomechanical beings who consumed everything in their path while moving in unison. One by one, they destroyed our planets. The first Guardian said that we attempted to battle, but they learned to use each weapon we made, changed, and Walker continues to view the videos, becoming more concerned about how long they will last. Do you have 6 months left? If not, they could follow our trail, which we came to warn you of. Assist you in getting ready. Maybe we can work together to succeed where we failed on our own the next time. A few days were a haze of activity, with governments from all across the globe uniting against the danger and putting aside long-standing. The Guardians openly shared their technology in their competitions, but they cautioned that it may not be sufficient. Thus Walker found himself collaborating closely with the Guardians to get knowledge on their weapons, shields, and, most importantly, the first Guardian informed him one evening that humans were distinct from other creatures, recognizing the capacity for unpredictable thought that we lost a long time ago. adapt with pure willpower rather than technology, as Walker saw. He felt the weight of humanity's responsibilities as he looked down at Earth from the observation deck of the orbiting station. Had never previously encountered such a danger, but they had something. The Guardians had given up, and the obstinate. Walker remarked, "Will be ready," more to himself than to the enemy. Whatever these swarm things are, the Guardian standing next to him hasn't seen humanity yet, and they will soon discover that we don't give up easily, the first Guardian softly nodded after seeing something that gave him hope for the first time in Walker's resolute gaze. Maybe these odd, fierce individuals could accomplish what they're supposed to do on their own. People couldn't keep up with the passing of time, the approaching swarm, and humanity's. 2 weeks after the Guardians' arrival, the planet had altered, and they were ready to demonstrate to the galaxy their full potential. Every major city currently has enormous development projects under progress, more than it had in the previous century. Defense systems using Guardian technology, the skies were constantly crowded with ships, and supplies in the United Earth Defense Force Headquarters main battle room. As Captain Walker addressed a gathering of international military officials, the holographic projection revealed the swarm's impending route is shown by irate red dots across space. Data from Guardians indicates that the swarm travels in the manner described by this Walker, leading to the trend is that instead of just destroying planets, they devour them whenever they. General Roberts, an elderly veteran with gray hair, said, "What makes them stronger? Ahead. And how precisely do we combat such a thing?" The first Guardian, with his blue skin, moved forward. Gleaming a little in the harsh lighting of the room, "We have given you our weaponry and shield technology, but more. Most significantly, we learned something that gives us hope for your species." Pushed a button, and a fresh picture of a human brain skinned with a fragment of the swarm's biomechanical technology. "Your brain waves are distinct from those of any other creature we've seen. They form patterns that seem to disrupt the swarm's HIV link, causing the chamber to explode." Whispering with excitement, Walker's pulse began to race. Finally, a true advantage. He said that we must test this to see how soon we can develop weapons based on it. Discovery. The days that followed were occupied with constant activity by experts from collaborated with Guardian engineers worldwide to create novel weaponry in subterranean testing chambers. They found that, when amplified and transmitted at the appropriate frequency, human brainwave patterns might confound and even damage swarm technological pieces that were acquired, but time was running out. Strange readings were reported from the furthest reaches of the solar system that corresponded with the Guardians' accounts of the first swarm scout vessels Walker operated. Monitoring the evolution of Earth's armed forces day and night, the vintage tanks and aircraft were being restored with Guardian tech warriors equipped with upgraded combat gear capable of withstanding the ISD assaults of the swarm. Your people discover that additional orbital defense stations are forming above Earth. As Walker witnessed a demonstration of the new hybrid weaponry, the first Guardian said rapidly, "It took our civilization." Walker nodded. "But it took you weeks to build these technologies, while it took years." His expression was grim. We lack yours." The breakthrough occurred on A. Dr. Laura Thompson is in charge of the human study team on Sunday morning. Her eyes were dazzling as mental weaponry exploded into the command center. "Enthusiasm, we succeeded," she said, distributing her data tablets among the. "Recently, we discovered a technique to increase the disruptive impact by a factor of 10. Broadcast can perhaps render all swarm units within a mile of it inoperable." Walker ordered all factories to start producing right away, since it was the first genuine optimism that had existed since the Guardians came. Project Mindstorm was the name given to the new weapons, yet even as humanity prepared. In order to convey their most dire warnings, the Guardians played recordings of whole worlds being destroyed by the swarm of powerful civilizations descending in a matter of days. The swarm did more than just destroy. Assimilated technology, adjusted to assaults, and returned more resiliently, recalling the first Guardian assured them that every victory must be accompanied by learning from every setback. Complete or will strengthen them when the month comes to an end on the 1st. Reported sighting of a swarm scout spacecraft close to Jupiter. It was tiny, approximately the size of a vehicle, yet its presence gave everyone the shivers. Walker gazed at a picture of Earth shot from orbit that night, and everyone who viewed the pictures in his rooms. The Guardians had fled because all they had and everything they were was in jeopardy. World to world, seeing the gradual demise of their civilization, yet. Since Earth was their sole home, humans were unique and would do all in their power to protect it. Walker said, his fist clenched, "Come on, we'll show them." When you corner a race that has never learned to give up, the true test was about to come, and humanity was ready to demonstrate why they were different from all the other species the swarm had seen. Every auto factory on Earth has transformed into a massive war factory, producing components for battleship toys. Businesses produced war drones, and even soft drink plants were transformed into create the unique cooling fluid required for the new weaponry. Captain Walker was standing in a former basketball arena. Now converted into a training facility, hundreds of troops rehearsed their maneuvers using the new hybrid weaponry. The weapons, under the guidance of Guardian instructors, seemed odd, a hybrid of human. Your form is incorrect, and Guardian technology is made to convert human brain waves into harmful energy. As she modified a soldier's grip, Anna, the Guardian weapons specialist, commented, "Feel the." Walker observed as the weapon, which is a part of you, was given strength by your thoughts. The soldier made another attempt, but this time the practice target didn't just shatter it. Utterly destroyed, the other troops applauded their rapid learning. Anna replied to. More quickly than we anticipated, Walker's blue skin glistened beneath the stadium lights. But not only the army were getting ready, all citizens had a part to play, and kids were taught emergency practices in educational institutions. Farmers produced surplus food for subterranean storage shelters. Were constructed in every city, but the largest project was taking place in space, where enormous orbital shipyards were operating all around the clock. Building ships that fused human armaments with Guardian shield technology had a fierce appearance. Antenna arrays covering black metal holes that would transmit the destructive brain wave assaults. In their laboratory, Thompson's team discovered something else. When people collaborate, they're combined. Take a look at this. She demonstrated how brain waves produced even more powerful disruption patterns known as the unity effect. Walker gestures towards a wave pattern-filled screen as our test participants When 10 people collaborate, the disruption field expands rapidly. Together, they can build a field that is 100 times more powerful than one by itself, which caused their combat to be completely redesigned. Method: troops would battle in connected groupings with their thoughts working together rather than battling as individuals. Via the new combat helmets, but the swarm scouts' time was running short. Ships were approaching and showing up more often close to the outer planets each. Tension increased after the sighting. Walker practiced space warfare for many hours in simulation chambers. The Guardians' recollections of actual combat served as the basis for the simulations versus computer-generated swarm ships. The swarm flowed like a torrent of metal and flesh, adapting, and they were scary. Walker discovered Anna working one evening as he made his way through the crowded command center hallways to every assault. We believed we were prepared when she was by alone in the weapon lab, gazing at a simulation of her devastated home planet. Said in private that while we had more sophisticated ships and superior technology, we lacked. Walker asked Unity what your people have, and she said, "Your." Although species quarrel and battle among themselves, you unite like no other when a genuine danger arises. Species we've seen, but she stopped and gave him a serious look. When you're upset, the swarm makes most animals afraid, but it makes people furious. Anger that might alter everything the next day brought news that was different. A huge energy signature flowing over everything was detected by the long-range sensors. Alarms rang all around the planet when the main swarm fleet entered the solar system far earlier than anticipated. Military forces positioned themselves in orbit as people relocated into shelters. Walker stood on the bridge of his new command ship, the UEEs, while a fleet of new hybrid spacecraft fired up their engines. Around him, the crews performed last-minute inspections of their ship's equipment. "All ships report ready, sir," as it buzzed with power and bristled with Guardian weaponry and brainwave amplifiers. Walker, according to his second-in-command, examined the Humanity tactical display. Had constructed more in 3 months than the majority of civilizations had in decades, and now they'd check to see if it was sufficient, then inform all ships that this is what we train. Since the swarm believes they are hunting us, they are going to discover they have fallen into a trap, and humanity doesn't flee. After the last preparations were finished, they would present the swarm to us. The actual conflict was about to start, which is why it was a mistake to threaten Earth. The outer settlements on Mars surrendered in less than. The swarm arrived in 6 hours, their biomechanical spacecraft bursting through the ground like a whirlwind of flesh and metal. Exterior defenses of the colony as if they were composed of paper, however this time, in contrast to, they encountered a different kind of human tenacity on previous planets they had devastated. As the emergency signals from Mars and the colonies arrived, Captain Walker swept off the Thunderchild's bridge. Miners battled as their houses collapsed around them, using their drilling equipment as weapons. Returning in order to give the evacuation ships more time to fight the escape all ships conflict. Delta Walker, the commander of Earth's ship force, advanced into location around the orbit of Mars. Keep in mind your training connection, your mind synchronization systems, and the swarm ships were not like anything they had ever seen in the brainwave transmission. Each simulation was unique, a tangled mixture of real tissue and technology that was taken from 100 dead planets and sent as a school of. The radar officer yelled as one of the first waves arrived, causing the fish to change course. Walker clutched his command chair as all crews activated at least 300 swarm ships. My target was hit by mind-sync fire, and the new human weapons systems were lighting and powered up. The Guardians had been given human minds, and they channeled the collective brain waves of their crews with an odd energy, together to produce a powerful fire the space between them. When the first burst of synchronized human brain waves struck, fleets glowed with energy. Like a hammer, the swarm ships caused some of them to spin uncontrollably. Link was momentarily lost, but the others swiftly adjusted, altering their. "We need more," Anna said from her station as they learned shield frequencies. Power Walker struck the ship-wide sea. "Everyone, pay attention and keep your houses in mind. Families recall the reasons for our battle against the second wave of brainwave weaponry. This time, the biomechanical components of hundreds of swarm spacecraft burst, making it more difficult. Incapable of surviving the mental attack, but for each ship they destroyed, 2 more were built, and then a swarm blast struck the. Someone shouted the fight around as Thunderchild caused the whole ship to shake, shields at 60%. Human spacecraft battled with all of their crews as Mars descended into anarchy. Connected via the mind sync system, which sent waves of mental energy into the swarm. The swarm replied with acid sprays that consumed metal, biological weapons, and live rockets that attempted to enter the ship's halls, but Walker saw something odd when he looked at there. He pointed to the tactical display when we struck them with the movement pattern. The neural weapons they use to defend themselves are not just damaged, they are also experiencing pain, which was novel. Previously, the hive mind had always seemed dispassionate, and Guardians had never noticed the swarm displaying symptoms of anguish. All ships' Walker broadcasts are mechanical in their assaults. Concentrate your attacks on. When they attack our home, the human fleet moves as a single unit, and their center mass helps them understand what happened. The impact of brainwave weaponry on the swarm's primary cluster was instantaneous. Ships smashed into one another in the hive mind of the swarm's flawless assembly. The emotional intensity of humanity's onslaught broke the link, but the triumph was fleeting, and a fresh wave of. These swarm ships, which were clad in substantial biological armor, had already. Walker instructed us to adjust to the first onslaught and return to a defensive stance. As the fleet withdrew into Earth's orbit, Walker provided us with the information we need. Considering the information they had acquired, they discovered a vulnerability even though the swarm was stronger than anything they had encountered. People may be harmed by the human mind, particularly when it is motivated by intense emotions. 3 ships lost the Mars colony because no other weapon could have been used at such a significant cost. Annihilated, but humanity had accomplished something that no other species had done. They had instilled dread in the swarm. Members of the ship's medical bay who were harmed refused to leave their stations. According to one soldier, his eyes were sparkling with purpose, but his face was scorched. Walker sent the monsters to experience fear for the first time. According to his report to Earth Command, the initial fight ended in high casualties, but we discovered their vulnerability. The swarm might be harmed, killed, and most crucially, They may be persuaded to fear us since the actual conflict was just getting started. The swarm would discover that invading Earth was the worst mistake humanity had ever committed since First Blood. Earth revealed its secret weapon concealed under the Antarctic Ice Project a few days after the Battle of Mars. Thunderstrike, the largest sonic mind cannon ever constructed, has been waiting for this time. After learning that the swarm was being harmed, Captain Walker stood in the Antarctic control room and saw the enormous weapon rose from its subterranean bunker. The machine's primary dish was huge. The walls were lined with banks of computers larger than a football pitch, each one linked to a human operator in A. Dr. Thompson said that all 1,000 operators are in place with mind-sync helmets. Seemed worn out, but we discovered that their aggregate brainwave production was greater than anything we had previously examined. They discovered that the swarm had been approaching Earth every hour and that their spacecraft were now encircling the moon in a black cloud. Fled the war on Mars, equipping their ships with improved armor, but they hadn't seen a thunderstrike. Walker gave the command and informed the fleet before starting the power-up procedure. Operation Hellstorm is already underway worldwide, with smaller but comparable sonic brainwave cannons, each driven by groups of people collaborating on their ideas, emerged from secret bunkers. The Guardians had contributed to the creation of the weapons via the new technology, but human power was the only source of power. Anna, who was now Earth's primary Guardian advisor, examined the final readings and the emotional outpouring. "It's amazing," she added, adding that your people's rage and resolve are generating energy. Walker nodded, and every human operator had patterns we never imagined were feasible. When someone was killed by this swarm, their rage and want for vengeance were directed into creating weapons. Fleet is in a position to use them, which is significantly more potent than just pure technology. According to the communications officer, the swarm is reacting to our movement. The strategy was straightforward but risky. The Earth fleet would advance and drive directly into the swarm's center. Ground-based cannons would fire when the opponent was completely engaged. All ships advance, entangling them in a web of sonic mind energy. On the screens around him, Walker sent orders from the Antarctic base to hundreds of Earth. Ships advance with their own miniature sonic weapons in readiness for the swarm's reaction. Their spacecraft advanced to encircle the human fleet just as planned, most likely believing they had captured Earth in A. In their final desperate attempt, they were unaware that they were being pulled into ground stations in ideal fire positions. Dr. Thompson said that all operators' brainwave patterns are ready for report. Walker synchronized and inhaled deeply. Everything hinged on this fiery moment. All stations were struck by thunder, and the main cannon fired first, revealing its beam. A blue-white ray of pure mind energy, even in space, amplified by the greatest. Smaller stations launched seconds after the most powerful sonic transmitters ever constructed. As their beams joined the first, the swarm was instantly affected, and ships trapped in the beams began disintegrating their biomechanical components since they were unable to withstand the combined mental strain of thousands of. The hive mind link that gave furious people their power started to disintegrate, but then an unforeseen event occurred as the beams struck the bigger. On ships, the M-Sync system began to provide input to the people in charge of the gun. They sensed the anguish and bewilderment of the swarm, and behind it all was a single Dr. Thompson, the supervising intelligence officer, said, pointing to her readings, "We're obtaining coordinates. The feedback indicates the location of their primary control point, which is the Queen Mine for the first." Walker grinned. This is what they've been waiting for since the war began. The swarm had a center and a brain. It wasn't simply a mindless force of nature. And they were already aware of its whereabouts. He sent word to command, telling them that we discovered it, we know where to attack, and the fight went on above with Earth's. The swarm's flawless configuration was in disarray as the fleet pressed their advantage, destroyed their spacecraft, shooting frantically or attempting to escape, but Walker was already. They were severely harmed by the swarm today as they were preparing their next move, but they had to win. In this conflict, they would have to go beyond just listening to them. They would have to attack the hive's core. Walker was aware of this as he saw the conflict playing out on the screens above him. After identifying the swarm's vulnerability and identifying its leader, they still had to face the true test. Do as battle their way through a whole galaxy armed to get there. The counterattack had been more effective then. Everyone understood that the plan was suicidal, but everyone had believed that now was the moment for humanity to confront the enemy. However, when Walker called for a cruise operation, 10,000 volunteers stepped up, and Hellfire would send the best ships on Earth head straight into swarm territory after the. Walker informed the gathered that this was a one-way journey using coordinates they had taken from the hive mind's own thoughts. Our prospects of returning are fewer than 10%, according to workers at the launch bay of Earth's orbiting outpost, the Guardians. These were folks who had lost their homes, families, and friends, and hardly one left the room. The swarm no longer fought for triumph. Instead, they fought for. The greatest accomplishment in human history was the fleet's retaliation for Operation Hellfire. Ships with the greatest crews Earth could provide, each equipped with upgraded sonic brainwave weaponry, had been stripped of everything save life support and weapons engines. Every last bit of energy was used to. The first Guardian demanded to join the mission your team are on because of the weaponry. Completed what we were unable to, he informed Walker on the flagship's bridge. The fleet launched under the guise of a massive attack by Earth's last troops, and they all made it through to the finish together. Near Jupiter, the main human fleet battled the swarm, attracting their attention. Using Guardian stealth technology, Walker ships managed to sneak past, reaching halfway. It was complete mayhem once they reached their destination before the swarm saw them. The radar operator called out to many contacts that swarm ships were coming from all. Walker had anticipated that all ships would activate sonic shields, so he started thinking. The new shields, which were another human invention, were transmitted in sync at full strength. They created a barrier using the crew's brain waves, which the swarm was unable to adjust to since they varied with human feelings and ideas. The first wave of swarm ships struck their shields, and the second wave attempted to. Their combined mental might tore through the swarm's defenses while the human fleet battled like demons around them, yet it came at a horrible cost. One by one, human spacecraft were destroyed by the ceaseless bombardment. We lost the valiant someone, and the M-Sync network made the remaining crew's battle even harder. Yelled that the defender had left, and the first Guardian busily worked at his station attempting to maintain its defenses. the hive mind is now concentrating on us. Halfway through the conflict, they lost, but they were warned that they knew what we were attempting to achieve. The swarm had severed their connectivity with Earth, leaving them alone in hostile terrain with no way to communicate. They perceived it as a huge, organic structure floating in space back then. Mechanical components came together to form what seemed to be a massive brain. The remaining ships coalesce around the Queen's mind, which is the center of the swarm's consciousness. Walker ordered the remaining 12 of their initial 50 ships to be ready for the final approach, but the densest concentration of swarm ships they had ever seen shielded the Queen's consciousness. The Guardians made their ultimate sacrifice when hundreds of them formed a live shield around their lord. The first Guardian stated, rising from his post and circling the fleet, "We will clear your path." Crew members followed suit. Walker inquired, "What are you doing?" even though he had already realized that the original course from our home planet are still carried on our spacecraft, the first. Guardian clarified that if we set them off simultaneously, the blast would clear A. Our last gift to mankind before Walker could get beyond their defenses. In protest, the Guardian ships broke formation and launched their engines directly into the defensive line of the swarm. The explosion was like the birth of a new sun, shining with unfathomable power. A huge hole in the swarm's defenses had been blasted when the light went out, and it led directly to the Queen's consciousness. The communications officer reported that all of the Guardian ships were gone. Walker grasped his chair, pushing back tears as his voice wavered. Their sacrifice will not be squandered. We're heading in the remaining ships full power to engines. With just 10 ships remaining in the human fleet, they sped towards their goal. It was evident, but they had to complete the task now that their extraterrestrial companions had died. The Queen mind that the Guardians had begun expanded on their view screens, and behind them, interminable waves of swarming spacecraft provided chase, but it made little difference since they were already sufficiently near to Operation Hellfire. Reached its final phase, it was time to demonstrate to the swarm why a species that has gone vengeful should never be cornered. The Queen's mind was transformed into an art form, and up close, it was even more horrifying. It pulsed with sickening light, its surface writhing with. The 11 surviving human spacecraft came towards it with tentacles of flesh and metal. Their crews were worn out but resolute, and all ships were terrified by the battle. Report the condition of the Sonic Weapon Walker Command landed from the Thunderchild's bridge, one ship at a time, calling. Each ship has successfully safeguarded their primary sonic brainwave cannon, preserving. They would only have one opportunity, sir, to launch this last assault, the science. When the officer shouted out, scans revealed that the Queen's mind was encircled by a mental barrier similar to our typical sonic strikes. Won't get through it. Walker had anticipated that the swarm wouldn't expose their central brain. However, humanity had one last trick: transmit the code Walker, which they had learned in their darkest hour. Ordered Project Unity to be initialized throughout the remaining ships. Each chamber that opened revealed a volunteer sleeping well and linked to. These individuals had lost everything to the swarm, and their thoughts were overflowing with. Their rage and hate had been amplified in stories, and all they could think about was getting revenge. Project Unity Online was awaiting this time, and the systems officer reported everything. The swarm ship's sleeper units were encircling them from behind, but Walker created a route to all ships because he couldn't stop. Remember why we're. In this instance, he spoke firmly, recalling Earth, Mars, and It all boils down to this, Guardians, everything we've lost, everyone we've lost. After he inhaled deeply, all ships started the final approach and turned on Unity. Protocols on my mark, the fleet proceeded as if the Queen's mind. The swarm ships behind them opened as they sensed their goal, unleashing waves of energy that drove their instruments insane. Walker yelled, "Fire!" and all 10 spacecraft let off sonic brainwaves. Guns simultaneously, however this time the energy was mingled with the typical. The full emotional energy of the sleeper unit's wrath was represented by sound waves. The force of sadness and the desire for vengeance concentrated into a single explosion. The Queen's mind was instantaneous and destructive, shattering like glass its mental barrier. The enormous structure was scarlet with evident anguish as the raw human emotions crashed against it. Every member of the human crew experienced the shock of the Queen's thoughts via the thought-sense system. Had never encountered a species' intense, unadulterated rage before. Walker told Dole to let up the Queen mind as they continued to struggle for their lives. Attempted to retaliate by releasing waves of mental energy that caused the crew to scream in agony, but humanity had discovered a way to. Someone claimed to have used pain to transform it into weapon sleeper units at maximum output. Walker saw his tactical presentation of the swarm, and the barrier was entirely down. Ships behind him were moving erratically, and their hive minds had ceased shooting. Their leader's sorrow broke the link, and all ships coordinated firing on my target. Walker ordered him to emphasize a location in the Queen's memory. Everything we have right there is the final energy measurement where it was strongest. Burst was unprecedented, with 10 sonic mind cannons fueled by. The core of the swarm's consciousness was hit by the collective wrath of mankind. Within its enormous shape, the Queen's consciousness erupted, disintegrating in a shower of biological materials and metal had an instantaneous impact on the swarm everywhere. The swarm ships started to collide against one another or drift aimlessly. The scientific officer claimed that his voice was filled with wonder there, and that his hive mind was gone. Walker sank back in his chair, tired. They're just machines now, empty machines. However, he triumphantly sent word to Earth, telling them to notify humanity. Regards, only 7 of the 10 ships survived the lengthy voyage home. The last fight, but they had succeeded in destroying the swarm of fear. Human tenacity and rage has destroyed many civilizations. Later, Walker joined the other survivors on a stage in New York to get honors, but his thoughts were with those who failed to return, the courageous crews who lost their lives delivering them to the target, and the Guardians who made the sacrifice. The swarm believed they were hunting easy prey when they followed the Guardians to do all in their power to give humanity a chance. Instead, they discovered a species on Earth that they had never seen before. It resisted death and used its feelings as weapons, becoming more fierce the more you heard it. They discovered mankind, but humanity had brought the end of hell with it.